We are Muskegon County at Work, spotlighting workers of local governments throughout our county, revealing what it takes to make our communities comfortable and safe.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Muskegon County Municipalities at Work. Your host here, DJ Hilson, with yet another, I'd say, thrilling and exciting guest. Today, I'll be speaking with Renee Gavin, the Emergency Manager. Emergency Manager, did I get that?
That's correct.
Muskegon County Emergency Manager. So, Renee, welcome first and foremost. Thank you for being here. Let's talk a little bit about you. I always like to have my guests, start out by talking about who they are, where they came from, and how they got to where they are in their position today.
Sure. So, yes, I'm the emergency manager for the county, and I have kind of an interesting background. Generally, most emergency managers come from a law enforcement background, which that is my primary background is law enforcement. I also have an EMT license, so I come from law enforcement EMS, private investigations. I'm married to a fire chief. I have worked for a college in security and safety as well as a hospital. So I have about 20-25 years of various aspects of public safety under my belt.
Yeah, that is interesting that this position, as you indicated, seems to always be law enforcement heavy. And there are very good reasons as to why. So let's talk a little bit about, or maybe you can explain to our viewers, what is emergency manager? What do they do? What do you do?
Oh, boy. This is too short of an interview probably to give you all of the aspects. Sure. But basically, emergency management is a critical field that helps communities prepare for and respond to and recover from disasters.
That is very succinct. Now, I obviously, and I think a lot of people don't appreciate or recognize that this position actually does exist within, in this case, county government. And how vital it is, not so much, certainly for the responding, but also the preparedness, preparing for what could potentially happen. So could you talk a little bit about that? What in your role really has to do with sort of preparing for what might come next?
So one of the first things that you need to know for preparedness is what are your hazards? So doing a hazard analysis or understanding what your hazards are, whether it be in your home, in your community, in your state, in your country, the hazards are the number one thing. In Michigan, we don't really have to worry a lot about hurricanes, but we do have other hazards. And in our county, we have other hazards that maybe we share with our neighboring county and hazards that are pretty standard for Michigan. We get tornadoes, we get storms, things like that.
Let's talk about storms, because it was not too long ago where we had a pretty significant storm come through and cause a lot of damage in the county.
Yes.
What was your role and what did you do in order to help facilitate not only the analysis of the damage, but then how we're going to make, get rid of the debris and then help of those that suffered damage as a result?
So one of the challenges in emergency management is staffing. I have 2 staff. I started out in this position with 1 staff. So we have to really lean on partnerships and collaboration with other agencies. And during the June storms, we had a couple fire departments that, of course, people are calling 911 because they're having trees fall on their houses. And it was pretty bad for a couple different areas in our county up north. People in the southern areas of the county may not have even noticed that there was something going on. And the first thing that happens is people call 911. And then if the resources that a few of those municipalities have dedicated to this particular response, if they don't have enough resources, dispatch calls me. And I'm the person that they call when their resources are overwhelmed and they need extra help from neighbors or other agencies.
So you essentially in those June storms were sort of the middle person, if you will, looking to coordinate with either outside the county, outside municipalities, to make sure that the resources were there to sort of assess and take care of the damage.
Yeah, I'm sort of the Swiss Army knife of resources.
Now, how have you found in that, I guess, keeping within that collaborative spirit, not only within the county itself, but our neighbors, our neighboring counties, how has that been for you as far as developing and then utilizing those collaborative resources?
So fortunately, before I came to Muskegon County, I worked in another county as a deputy emergency manager. One of the things that emergency managers do is we develop relationships with other emergency managers, with the Homeland Security Division at State Police. We work closely with them. We meet, there's conferences and there's meetings that we attend where we're all talking about different things that we're dealing with and how we address them. Lots of lessons learned at, the MEMA conference, things like that. Developing relationships, though, is really important.
So in an emergency situation, let's just take it to the extreme. At least my memory goes back to there being a command center here in the county. And what is the process that happens? You get involved, and now we've got to utilize this command center. What? I guess if you could explain to people what the process is.
Sure. Basically, it starts out, there's some sort of emergency, and someone calls for help, or they call 911. And 911 dispatches the resources needed to address that emergency. If the emergency is too big for the local resources, and, for example, if a fire department has a large fire, they pull in neighboring fire departments. Similar concept. If it's a larger emergency, we pull in maybe fire, police, EMS. We may have to backfill from other fire departments. We may have to backfill from neighboring counties. Sometimes we have to ask for the state's help if it's too big for the county to deal with, and so on up to the federal government.
And you have to remind me, going back to those June storms, did we get to the state level? Were you asking for assistance from the state?
Yes.
And maybe describe that process. I mean, obviously they've got sort of for lack of a better way to describe it, a disaster relief funds. Mm-hmm. But I guess there's probably a rubric, if you will, that how high the disaster has to be before the state gets involved.
So basically, your local municipalities have to exhaust their resources and ask for help from the county, and the county has to exhaust their resources, and then you can ask the state. And basically what that looks like is a county will do a declaration, and that gets sent up to the state, and then the state will review it and see if it meets their criteria for state assistance. If it does, then they'll do a state declaration. And if the state declaration, if we utilize too many, overutilize our state resources and we need more, there are also mutual aid agreements with other states, but we could also request a presidential disaster. And it sort of is a stepping stone type thing.
Well, at least to my memory so far, I mean, Muskegon County's been somewhat lucky. We've had our share of, I'll say, mini disasters. We haven't reached the level of looking towards the feds, because, if you're doing that, it's really bad.
Correct.
Now, you also assist local law enforcement in some of their, I'll say, training needs and equipment needs. Can you describe that? Sure.
So Homeland Security grants and things like that come from the feds to the states, then they get parted out as allocations to counties. And emergency managers can build projects per se that fit within their allocation that they get from the state and from the feds. Now, they don't necessarily just hand us money. We have to do the project, we have to purchase the items, and then we have to ask for reimbursement later. So it's a whole process. It takes a long time to get through that process and then go through the reimbursements. LETPA, which is Law Enforcement Terrorism Prevention Activities, emergency managers are supposed to spend about 35% of their allocation on those particular items. So one of the things that fit under that this last time was the Marine Patrol unit got new quick release vests. They were getting leftover vests from the sheriff's office, which when you have a bullet resistant, we'll call it bullet resistant vest, you have to put it underneath your shirt and under your clothes and then your jacket. And the Marine Patrol unit, in order to dive into the water to save somebody, would have to take off their shirt, their vest, and that takes too much time. So we got them vests that are quick release vests. They're over the clothes. They can pop them off really quick if they have to go in the drink to pull somebody out. So that's one of the projects that we did.
Now, how have you found, and you've been at this position for a few years, how have you found the Muskegon County local law enforcement community to work with?
One of the things that really strikes me is that they train together, they work together, they have these great partnerships. I'm really pleased being a newer person here at the collaboration between law enforcement. Even the fire departments. The fire departments are really great at collaborating also. And it's really important for all of us to work together because if we have the big one happen, right, it's all hands on deck. So we all need to know each other before that happens and be able to work together.
Now, are you a part of, I know countywide, the local law enforcement will do training exercises. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's tabletop, sometimes it's, I'll say even active shooter training. Are you part of those operations in order to see and be a part of not only the command structure, but the structure and how things are being communicated?
Yes, I can't go to all of them, but I also have to have exercises. So when I got here, I started doing some, basic stepping stone workshops, seminars, tabletops, things like that. You build from the basics and work your way up.
Is it safe to say, at least from what you've seen, that local law enforcement, including, I'll say first responders, are all working towards being prepared if necessary, where you indicate all hands on deck? In other words, we're not just waiting for something to happen. We're prepared for when something does happen.
Exactly. We're all a piece of the puzzle as a whole, and we all need to be able to do our part. Otherwise, we'll be leaving some holes that need to be filled.
I can't not have this conversation without having you talk about the dam project, the flooding issues that you've been not only communicating to local law enforcement about, but the community about, again, as we talk about being prepared for a potential disaster. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. I worked for the neighboring county, Muskegon County, and they have a couple dams. And so I've worked with Abby on a variety of projects and just awareness. It's really important for people to be aware. Like I talked about the hazards that maybe you have or you share with the neighboring county. I think a lot of people had their eyes on the Texas flooding that happened. If you're near a body of water and we get lots of rain, there's a potential for flooding, whether it be a river or anything else. And there may be different causes for things like that. If we talk about Midland and Edenville and Sanford, there was a smaller dam that failed and it adversely affected the county. A lot of these dams are pretty old. Consumers Energy has been a good partner. They've been taking care of those dams. We actually work with them also. They have an entire plan, and we work with them for planning. So we have to plan just in case something happens, not because we think it's going to happen. So I think a lot of people are, hey, this is going to happen. I hope it never happens. But if we plan for maybe the biggest disaster that we could potentially have in the county, we're going to be ready for all the smaller ones.
Yeah, so ultimately, as you indicated, there are, and again, for Muskegon County, they might not even think about the fact that in Muskegon County, you've got a couple of dams that actually do control the water flow, if you will, coming into Muskegon County, and why it's important for you and others to be at the ready, because, again, and I didn't know this until you were talking about it, a dam failure in Muskegon County is a problem for Muskegon County.
It is. We share the Muskegon River, so any kind of flooding that would occur in the Muskegon River watershed, if we get a ton of rain, it comes down into Muskegon Lake. So anything, I mean, if you look at Texas, the Texas floods with the girls' campground, they just got a lot of rain. It wasn't even a dam failure. So there could be any number of factors that could contribute to flooding, like frozen ground, snow, excess rain, things like that. Right now, our water levels are low, so we're good for that for a little bit. We'll see how much snow we get this winter, if that contributes to how much water we have. But, preparing for any of these things is really important.
Well, I think one of the takeaways that people need from this particular episode is to appreciate the fact that there are people like you, even though you have limited resources, working every day, making sure that we're prepared, and that more importantly, our local resources are prepared if and when a disaster strikes.
Yeah, and personal preparedness is really important too, because you may not get help for 48 to 72 hours. I'm one person and I'm trying to pull in resources. They all have to pack their bags, grab their stuff, throw it in their car, and then come over, depending on how far away they are. So having people be personally prepared, as well as taking care of our employees, like fire departments, police departments, they're not going to come into work if they have to address something for their family, like what happened with Katrina in Louisiana. So personal preparedness, whether it be your employee, whether it be your family, super important.
Well, let's talk a little bit. If you had some tips, for those who are watching, what are some easy tips for people to just be prepared?
So there's a lot of information on ready.gov about preparedness. I can give you a personal, for instance, I have a special needs child, and probably some of my background and the reason I got into emergency management was problem solving with my kid. She can't do stairs. Tornado. What do you do with a kid that is stubborn, is adult-sized, and will not cooperate with you, and there's a tornado? We had to figure out ways to get her into the basement. I had to figure out a way for my teenager babysitter to get her in the basement. So things like that, just thinking about at home, hey, what are my hazards at home? If there's a tornado, what's the family going to do? Where are we going to go? If there's a fire, what's the family going to do? What's our escape plan? Where are we going to go? Where are we going to meet up to make sure everybody got out?
Well, and for those parents that have kids, especially elementary, they learn these things. They learn about fire and fire safety. They learn about certainly weather-related incidents like tornadoes. You might want to pay attention to your kids because they might be the greatest resource to help you prepare for being ready.
You're absolutely right.
So obviously you deal with disaster, you deal with preparedness and whatnot. What do you do to sort of unwind and have fun? I mean, you got to do something to take your mind off of the I'll say the craziness that stuff brings, I would assume, on a daily basis.
So I love to read. I read a lot as far as hobbies, gardening and, refurbishing furniture. I play the cello. My first 2 years in, though, I have not had a lot of time for any of that because I'm still working on building the program. I hope to have more time for my, free time to do things like that in the future, once I get things all built up where they need to be.
Well, I mean, again, you've been in law enforcement for a long time. I think, certainly with that experience, there should be a recognition that you have to at least give your mind a mental break, right? Because there are a lot of things that happen. Sometimes people don't even know are happening, but there are people out there responding accordingly to that.
Yes.
Well, Renee, thank you so much for being here today, but more importantly, for taking on this huge responsibility for Muskegon County. And I think, people may not know or recognize that your services, not only in the preparedness, which I think is probably the critical thing, but also the response. Again, the June storms, your work on making sure that everybody's aware of the potential dangers that either flooding or dam breakage has, not only for Newaygo, but certainly downstream here in Muskegon County. So thank you for your service in that. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, that wraps up yet another episode of Muskegon Municipalities at Work. Really, really important. Not only that you all recognize the work that goes in on a daily basis to make us ready and the people that respond ready for disaster, but what we as individual citizens, our responsibility. So good information, ready.gov. Listen to your elementary kids if they are going through fire safety and certainly tornado awareness. They actually do have some good ideas on how you as a family can be prepared. Until the next time, have a great day. And again, this series does not get off the ground and have the success it does without the ingenuity of one Michael Vogus.